I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Welcome to the Rainbow Push Saturday Morning Community Forum. Each and every week we seek to inspire you with our information, with our messages, with our music, to share with you what we are doing so that you can then get informed. And then once you're informed, we know that you'll become engaged in the movement for social change. There's thousands of people that are food insecure. There are lines of people standing, waiting for food to be distributed all across the length and breadth of this country. COVID has had a horrible impact on families. Rainbow Push has been providing meals thanks to Gibson's Restaurant, thanks to World Central Kitchen, and thanks to Valari Restaurant in the city of Chicago. We've been able to give several thousand families, individuals, seniors, veterans, homeless persons, a meal this week. Thank God for those donations, and we thank God for the opportunity to be of service. You want to give to help feed the hungry, and all you have to do is text the word "Feed the Hungry" to 41444. Reverend Jackson wants to give more meals during the month of December, during our anniversary month, because at one time, Reverend Jackson and his family were in a food line at Fellowship Church. We want to make sure that we can be a blessing to those who need it. The Reverend Jackson's column this week, you will see that Reverend Jackson is talking about the Trump shadow government and give you an analysis on the difficult transition that President-elect and Vice President-elect Biden and Harris will experience as we move towards January 20th. What we need you to do is download that column, rainbowpush.org, so that you can be informed and you can then share your information with people that you know. We have our oratorical program. It's every Saturday. We have children from across the country who are being taught oratory, how to provide speeches, and they're also learning financial literacy each and every Saturday. They're on Zoom. If you want to support the oratorical program, you can just do it by taking out a membership for a young person. Membership for youth, $15. Every young child should be a member of the Rainbow Push Coalition. December 2nd, you don't want to miss this year's Automotive Summit. We have a report card that we issue about the automotive industry. You see the cars, but I want you to see what's behind the car. I want you to think about who are the professionals that work for these automotive companies. You go to rainbowpush.org and register for the Detroit Automotive Summit. It is virtual. You're going to be shopping during this holiday season. What should you do? If you're shopping on Amazon, go to Amazon Smile. Look for Push for Excellence. While you're shopping, you can give to Push Excel. A part of your money that you spend on Amazon will be shared with Push for Excellence. I need all of you who are going to shop during this holiday season. Just go to Amazon Smile and look for Push for Excellence, and we can be your charity. The other way you can support us, and you can subscribe to YouTube. That helps us pay for this broadcast that brings you this information each and every week. And the final thing you can do is just be a member. Make sure that your membership is renewed. But secondly, you got 10 friends. I know you know 10 people. Ask them to join Push. It's $35 a year. That's all it is, $35 a year. And I know you're gonna buy some Christmas gifts. Look, this book, it's going to be a treasure that you want to keep. Make this a gift to family, friends, young people. These are historic speeches and sermons by Reverend Jesse Jackson. You want to make sure that you get a copy of this book, Keeping Hope Alive. This is how you can keep hope alive, and at the same time, remember some of the great speeches that Reverend Jackson has made You want to share those with family and friends. Get Keeping Hope Alive. Get ready for Anniversary Month. It's going to be power packed. We're going to go from breadbasket to all of the economic programs that we've launched since Reverend Jackson started breadbasket in the 60s. We're going to have a special on December 31st. It's watch night, but the first day of the year, it's Emancipation Day. We're going to have a special broadcast for you. It's a lot. And then we're coming up on our Dr. MLK breakfast. You'll hear more. It's not going to be a breakfast. It's going to be a virtual celebration. You don't want to miss it. Don't turn the channel. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. The push is on.
Good morning. It depends on where you are in the country. Thank you for joining us for the Rainbow Push Coalition and Citizenship Education Fund's annual Media and Telecom Symposium. This year, we're doing our symposium a bit differently this year due to the wake of this ongoing pandemic. I first want to thank all of our sponsors for participating in this particular session. I want to lift up the names of Verizon, Charter Communications, the Motion Picture Association of America, T-Mobile, and Comcast for supporting our efforts with the Rainbow Push Coalition. Our theme this year is charting a path forward for digital education and economic inclusion. Today, our session entitled Education and the Implications for the Educational Achievement of Black Students. But before we share in our panel discussion, we have another special guest, Ms. Randi Weingarten. She's been laboring in this field for a long time, in the educational space for a long time at the American Federation of Teachers. So we want to welcome her and invite her to give us opening comments and remarks.
Thank you, Steve. Let me kind of dive into something that I have been working on for several months. And frankly, we need an economic stimulus to deal with this. I have called as many of the telecom and internet companies as I can, personally begging them to actually get connectivity to kids. Like many of us on the panel, we have connectivity at home. I happen to spend $250 a month for connectivity at home. Tell me how many parents can do that for their kids. Tell me why, in a situation when we have 8 months of COVID, where we know that remote education has a role now and will ultimately have a role afterwards. And this is as the leader who has always said that remote education can't be a substitute, but we know it has a very important role and will have a really important role, just like telemedicine will have an important role. We need to make sure that kids don't just have MiFis or smartphones or things like this. We need to make sure that kids have connectivity, and we need to work on that together. And what it does is that this disproportionately, just like COVID, just like the health impacts, just like the issues about essential workers and the safety impacts, this disproportionately impacts Black and brown kids. So I want you to know you have an ally in this white girl who knows and sees every single day what is happening to our kids when we can't get them connected, when we can't get them back into school for in-person learning, knowing full well we need to actually make sure that we have the safety safeguards in order to do that. This is an opportunity with this new administration to change that. It's an opportunity in the first 100 days to actually get to a COVID stimulus that unemployment insurance, that helps small businesses, that makes sure that our Black and brown businesses do not teeter into bankruptcy, that makes sure that we have the wraparound services in our communities so we can deal with emotional and social issues, that makes sure that we open schools for feeding so we can feed people. There is an opportunity for a renaissance for public education and for a way of actually bringing communities together if we can get the kind of COVID stimulus that the President Trump wanted so much for the cruise industry and the airline industry, but not so much for people throughout America. So ultimately, if I sound urgent, yes, it's an amazing moment because of what's happening with a new administration who believes in Title I, who believes in IDA, who believes in community schools, who believes in economic prosperity for all. But I feel the same urgency as I know your panel does. Every single day, we cannot forsake this school year for kids, and we need to do things, including making sure we have the digital divide.
First and foremost, this pandemic has essentially upturned our basic functions, and now being connected matters. It not only matters in our schools, but it matters in every aspect of our full life as we plow through the public health crisis that we are in right now. And being connected also matters for those Black and brown families who, by the way, are more likely to be the frontline workers who are actually servicing this economy, Black and Latina families and households. But in addition to that, they are highly susceptible to the virus. And as a result of that, we're seeing now for Black Americans, COVID is listing at third at the top of chronic diseases after diabetes and pulmonary heart disease. And finally, we are now facing what I hope we'll talk about on this panel, the imminent threat of a revisit of the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education Act. And what do I mean by that? We have 50 million kids that was sent home in March, 15 to 16 million of them that did not have access at home or lacked an internet-enabled device. That is according to research by Common Sense Media. 9 million who didn't have either. And as a result of this lack of connectivity and equity existing among Black, brown, and beige children, we are now seeing that Black children, if they are not connected to any type of formal learning, will be behind 10.3 months in terms of cognitive retention. Latina students around 8+ months, low income, almost a year. So not only are we widening the educational gap or the educational achievement gap as educators know it, we are also widening the lack of opportunities that may be available to our young people. And what that future of industry looks like is what we're in right now. I mean, I'm a parent. I have a 14-year-old that half the time I don't know what she's studying. I don't know what she's doing because I'm down here on these Zooms. But I can tell you this, it has been difficult because not only are the kids lacking in opportunities educationally, they also have insecurities around food, housing, well-being checks, as well as, if it's not the pandemic, I had 2 superintendents on last week on a panel, it's the California wildfires. So we need to come up with a digital solution, my friends, because as one of the superintendents indicated to me most recently, we are losing kids by the hundreds because they cannot log in. They are now becoming virtually truant. They are missing from the registration rolls of schools. And I've got educators that can speak to some of that nuance. And it is becoming highly difficult to track their progress.
My name is Eric Collazo. I'm the principal at Washington Leadership Academy. It's a public charter school that serves 9th through 12th grade in Washington, D.C. We serve Ward 5. The school demographics, we are 97% African-American and Latina. And we also have a population of students that are free reduced lunch at 90%. But right now, when it comes to like what learning looks like now versus what it looked like at the beginning in March, we've definitely adapted and changed and did different iterations. But one of the most key things that we had to address from the very beginning was that access and making sure that our students had provisions to make sure that they didn't have to just focus on like the actual just academics, but also we had to make sure that we were taking care of their their betterment, their well-being. So we made sure off the bat that we were able to provide them with food and services that they needed. So we were providing them food at first at the school. Thankfully now at this point, we're able to actually have delivery services for those foods so that they don't have to actually expose themselves through travel. And also at the same time, we had to see which parents or which family members had internet connectivity. So we actually surveyed them, we contacted them, reached out, text, email, any kind of form that means that we can get in contact with them. And we basically just had a survey of seeing who needed internet access and how could we help them in that process. In some cases, we were able to actually use some of our funds to make sure that we paid off any bills that they had to make sure they were reconnected to the services that they already had. And that was our initial effort. And thankfully that's helped us and provided a space for us in this current semester where those families that needed those connectivity problems solved originally were able to continue that through the summer and into this semester as well. I think just finally, just thinking about it too, and like, it's like the experiences overall, this has been, I mean, we use the word unprecedented all the time, it certainly is. But one of the things that I think has been essential for us as a school is to constantly adapt. In the very beginning, we did see that trickle off where even though we were providing our students with internet connectivity, even though like I think we were very much prepared. We are a school that focuses on computer science. So we gave all of our students Chromebooks that they could take home and bring to school when we were in person. So we already had those materials ready. We were very fortunate. But even with that, we did see a trickle off effect where it was really difficult to get students engaged and learning and just like with this new model.
What these children are dealing with is the pandemic, is the political world that was going on, and as well as I was saying before. So we had to look at we thought about looking at developing cultural awareness. And when we talked about developing cultural awareness, the protest was the other one. We talked about developing cultural awareness. It wasn't just on a national scene, but then also from a local perspective, these students' home cultures. We had to take a look at those things too. And that also involved, and which took us back to what we're talking about now, this digital divide, what they're actually dealing with. But we're focusing on cultural awareness. And I know that's a term that's thrown around a lot nowadays, but not just in education, but in politics and in the media too. But in my experience teaching here, it is very important that our students understand who they are, what they're dealing with, and then how they can propel to be better than what they are viewed from a racial perspective. So yes, from culture, we're focusing on cultural awareness. The pandemic has caused us to do that. The protest has caused us to do that. And then the political environment has caused us to do that. And I do think that that is shaping and molding our students to be, going back to what you spoke about earlier, Nicole, to being different and school being different than what it has been before. Because like I said, we're not just focusing on reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're having to have those conversations with these students. We're having to have those conversations not only with these students, but with staff members who may not look like our students and who do not understand what they're feeling, how they're feeling, and the emotional and mental toll that the George Floyd incidents and the Breonna Taylor incidents and what they're having on our students. So when you have a teacher that's coming in and saying, well, my father was the police, so I always sat with the police, we need to have some conversations.
From my perspective, equity is definitely at the center, should be at the center of our work. But it's important that as we reach for and search for solutions, that we don't grab at simple solutions to a very complex problem. The reality is, for us to start trying to solve the equity problem by only dealing with culturally responsive training, and we need that. We need the culturally responsive training. We need awareness and all that. But the reality is, most of these issues come from an institution. And so the institutions that we create are built upon these concepts that are not built, where equity is not important. So it's institutionalized. And a lot of the things that we have in our systems are institutionalized, and our systems have systematized racism and equity and other discrimination. And so unless our solutions address not only the practical everyday work of the teacher, if they only stop there, then we fall short of the goal. We have to have an institutional and systemic approach to undoing some of these inequities and some of these systems of inequity that have been established for quite a while. And it takes everyone working toward that.
Go ahead, Reverend.
Yeah, I'm gonna repeat that. We're in a life and death genocidal issue here. This pandemic is real, really real. Yes, I was on the phone with people in Geneva who were trying to get killing of Black people. The United Nations Commission on Genocide to address these killings of our people. That's a big issue. But in Chicago, we can't have funerals and weddings, can't have Thanksgiving dinner together. Real stuff. We're in the middle of a germ warfare. So surviving is a big part about it. So just surviving the germ warfare. I don't know where it come from, but it's raging. So please, let's work on that together. And then you mentioned about education number 3. After pulmonary disease or something. Where's education on that list? I mean, COVID-19 is number 3. Where's education on this? We have not decided yet that we can or will. We must learn to read, write, and count, and think as a people. We work together. I always come in physically sometimes. Some of these voices, getting back educated. These guys, they turn many voters out for the first time. Jackson voted for the first time, good stuff. But we've not decided to really deal with learning. That's kind of a certain point of view. Please, parents must accept much greater responsibility for notwithstanding.
Let's actually, we're doers at Rainbow Push. I mean, I work at Brookings, but I'm always an RPC fan for life. When you get your pen, you'll never lose it. It'll stay endeared to your heart.
Thank you, parents. Thank you for supporting your students in this time period of learning from home and just having to support them in these changes in this season of this pandemic. And here at Push Excel, we want to make sure that we continuously support you. We understand that going forward and making the decision to go to college sometimes can be difficult. As a matter of fact, over the last 10 years, it has been a drastic change of an average of 10% of minority students going to 2 to 4 year institutions more than it was just 10 years ago. And so we want to make sure that you have all the information and the tools that you need to do this. So we have 2 workshops coming up that you want to make sure that you plug into. On December 10th, we have a rap chat. The rap chat is in partnership with the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha, Sorority Incorporated, and Chicago Public Schools Office of Career and College Services. We are going to have a very candid conversation with college students so that your high school student can ask them anything that they may want to know about the college life and the experience. It's really key that they have the opportunity to share and ask those questions before they go into the next season of their life. As they're filling out their applications, they should have already done their FAFSA. If not, take this time period to sit down as a family to get that done. And then next up, we are having an HBCU tour with Metropolitan Family Services, as well as the Links Incorporated. And that is going to be on December 12th. So we want to make sure that you stay tuned and you stay plugged in so that you don't miss anything, because making the next step and the decision as a family to go to college is sometimes very challenging. And here at Push Excel, we always support you and we always bring you great information and great resources. So we partner with the best to do so. So go to www.pushexcel.org and sign up for our workshops. And we have a full lineup in 2021 with those workshops as well. We're excited and we want to make sure that you continue to push for excellence with us as well. Thank you.
Good morning. We are in the midst of a major drive to get more members, more people engaged and involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. If you're interested in public policy and you want to help change the policies that impact those incarcerated, change the policies that impact students attending colleges and universities. If you want to be a policymaker, then you need to join Rainbow Push and join by paying your $35 right now. Some of you watch us every week. You listen to us on the radio. You're viewing us in social media. We need you to become a member. It's only $35 a year. If you believe in the scholarships that we give to thousands of students each and every year, we've awarded more than $10 million to scholars year to date. What do you have to do to give and support Push? It's really very simple. You can go to rainbowpush.org if you're on a computer and press donate. Give any amount. Every dollar is important. You want to talk to somebody, call us at 773-256-2775. You can give right now, any denomination that you choose. You can text the word PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444. Text on your cell phone. Most of you have a cell phone. Just text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444, and you can give any amount that you feel comfortable giving. Or call us 773-256-2775, or go to rainbowpush.org and just press donate. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you.
I I am Dr. Sonia Whitaker, National Director for Education Policy for Push for Excellence. I want to start out by sharing with each of you that the theme for this particular summit is entitled Shaping America's Education Agenda. And I want to be even more clear that, as is indicated in the next slide, Shaping America's Education Agenda, the theme came as a direct result of, as you will recall, during the last presidential debate, it was announced, the amazing commentator announced to the entire audience, and more specifically to the presidential candidates, that on that particular evening, they would cover the 6 most important topics, paraphrased, impacting America, impacting our country. And guess what? Education was not one of them. And don't just take my word for it. Beyond the impact of the pandemic on schools, there has been virtually no discussion, at least during the general election portion of the campaign, about substantive education reforms like the crisis of college affordability and what must be done to address the academic achievement gaps that exist, which have to be addressed in order to ensure that students reach their fullest intellectual potential. And so as indicated on the next slide, I thought you would really appreciate it. Let's take a look at the education agendas from previous administrations. First, we have President Bill Clinton's administration's education agenda, which was rather entitled Goals 2000. And for your listening pleasure, I'll share, many of you will recall that Goals 2000 during President Bill Clinton's administration was to improve learning and teaching by providing a national framework for education reform to promote research, consensus building, and systemic changes needed to ensure equitable opportunities and high levels of educational attainment for all students, amongst many other objectives. With regards to the following slide, President George W. Bush's administration had, which I know you'll be familiar with, the term No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. And you will recall that the goal of the education agenda during President George Bush's administration was to close the achievement gaps by providing all children with fair, equal, and significant opportunity to gain access to a high quality education. And then we have the next education agenda, which was introduced during President Barack Obama's administration. And the first term was entitled The Race to the Top. And the second one was entitled, again, as you will recall, Every Student Succeeds Act. Now, with regards to Race to the Top, some of the key priorities relevant to that agenda was specific to the adopting of standards and assessments that prepare students to succeed in college and the workplace, building database systems to measure students' growth, recruiting, developing, and rewarding high quality, effective teachers and administrators, and also a relentless focus on turning around lowest performing schools. With regards to the Every Student Succeeds Act, what occurred during the President Barack Obama's administration relevant to education was this act, which stated the purpose being, the title in particular was to provide all children specific opportunity to receive fair, equitable, and high quality education for the purpose of closing the academic achievement gap. And then during President Donald Trump's administration, with regards to his education agenda, during his first term, the focus was on school choice. And as many of us will recall, he did put forth a second term proposal, which expanded all options relevant to the topic of school choice. And more specifically, the verbiage in his proposed education was provide school choice for every child in America. I think that speaks for itself. And then with regards to his second agenda relevant to the second term, he indicated a relentless interest in having the topic Teach American Exceptionalism addressed. And more specifically, as it relates to that topic in particular, Teach American Exceptionalism some would argue, came as a direct result of this current administration's belief that a substantial number of young Americans have been taught to believe that their country is systemically racist and thus needs an overhauling. And so with regards, again, to this second term proposed agenda, the desire was to make sure that students are taught American exceptionalism. With regards to President-elect Joe Biden's administration's education agenda, I'm going to refer you, if you haven't had an opportunity, to the Biden plan for educators and students and our future. That's where his plan is clearly spelled out. I have pulled out for you, I think, 5 of the most important topics, which right now his education agenda consists of support for educators by giving them pay, investing in our schools so that we can better meet the social, emotional, and health needs of the students that we serve, ensuring that no child's education or future is determined by the zip code in which he or she lives in, providing every middle and high school students a path to a successful career, and investing in our children as early as birth. It's time to set the agenda straight. I want to share one thing with you. I did some of the homework for you. I have taken the liberty of not just noting the bullet points for you, but really examining to great length the education agendas for each of the presidents for whom I had just described. And I saw some trends and patterns. And one of the trends and patterns that I saw consistently throughout their reports was topics associated, as you will recall, addressing the need to close the academic achievement gap, the improvement of low-performing schools, anything associated with equity. In many instances, somewhere throughout all of their agendas, those topics came up.
It's really important for us to talk about education at this time, especially given the fact that we have a new president, although somebody doesn't know that, but the fact that we have a new president who has a comprehensive education agenda makes me happy. He's also committed that the Secretary of Education will be a teacher, which also make us have quite a stark contrast from what we had in the previous administration. He's talked about tuition relief and all the things that we think are important. But there's some other things that we have to look at. Probably about at least a third of our young people are not in school 5 days a week anymore. They're learning, distance learning. And for some of them it's easy, but for some of them it's not. For some of those who have working moms, they may be at home by themselves. Are they doing their work? Are they doing something else? We really are letting our system fall apart. And I'm really frightened for our young people, because this is going to show up in testing scores and other things in 3, 5, 10 years. And when it shows up, the achievement gap is going to widen, not narrow. And we know that. Why is this being paid so little attention? Well, this administration doesn't care about education, as we know, the current administration. But we do know that Brother Biden has an ambitious educational agenda. And we know that his wife, Jill, is a community college professor. And so she will keep him on his toes. The other issue that is really important now, and we've seen this in the past 4 years, but we've especially seen it in the wake of our civic protests, is a lack of education for the American people about race matters. People, I had a young man tell me that he didn't believe there were 5,000 lynchings, but there were. Young white guy, very pleasant, but he didn't believe there were that many lynchings. The racial narrative needs to be woven into history. People need to know about those 5,000 lynchings. They need to know about Jim Crow laws. They need to know about redlining, because you can't understand the wealth gap until you really understand the racial history. And too many people simply do not.
Well, thank you, Dr. Malveaux, for your continual leadership of Push for Excellence. And of course, Reverend Jesse Jackson, our founder, and all of the work that he's done across the years. We thank you for the vision of Push for Excellence, which is to inspire teachers, parents, and students to push for excellence, and to instill within the idea of every teacher that every child can learn, every child will learn, and every child should be pushed to the limits of their ability so that they might excel in education. We're looking to set the policy agenda for 2021 and beyond. We're in a digital world. We must reimagine how we educate our students at every level and how we engage parents and teachers to work together in this virtual, remote world that we now live in. I'm excited because we have a truly committed, excited educator leading this policy discussion and leading our policy initiatives at Push for Excellence. And so we welcome you, Dr. Sonia Whitaker. You've been with us across the years. And in this role, I am clear. The one thing that will be on the Biden-Harris agenda will be education of children of color, children who are poor, and children who've been disenfranchised and without equity. Thank you so much for all that you do, and it does not yet appear what you will become and how education will unfold in coming days, weeks, and months. Thank you so much for your service and for your time.
I'd like to ask our panelists, can you talk with us a little bit? As we've indicated, the theme for tonight is Shaping America's Education Agenda. You busy people, can you talk with our listening audience, our viewing audience, about why this topic is of particular interest to you? I'll start with Dr. Elston.
The whole conversation around higher education was very much rooted in access. How do we get more students, an opportunity to get access to higher education? The problem was too few of those students were ever completing. And of course there were great examples of, minority serving institutions and HBCUs who had a historical mission of doing that work well. The problem was that, very few students, once they arrived at those doorsteps, were never finishing. And so when I think about this larger conversation around setting a higher education agenda, it's very much aligned with what I am doing, what my team is doing, and what our organization is doing at a national level. And I think it's very connected, not just, our name is Complete College America. And although our focus is overwhelmingly on what happens when students get to the doorstep of college, the reality is that it's very much interwoven with the K-12 system. And if we're thinking about economic recovery in this country, we're going to have to really think about what our processes look like, what our systems and our structures look like to close what we've been calling institutional performance gaps. We're no longer talking about achievement gaps and placing that situation on it's the student's problem, it's the community's problem. We know the issues that exist and the challenges that exist within our communities. But broadly, we feel like it is an obligation of institutions to serve them well. And I say we are serving more students better, but the question is, are we serving all students well? And to me, that's the conversation in this larger agenda.
And I can appreciate that, Dr. Elston and team here, this idea of a conversation about the institutional performance gap says that we move beyond blaming students, that we move beyond blaming parents, that we move beyond blaming communities to at the college and the university level saying that we're engaged in some in-depth analysis of what we can do to move our children to our young adults rather to the next level.
Higher education has become my specific interest, in particular HBCUs, because we know HBCUs are the backbone of our country and provide that stable and nurturing environment for such an essential population. It's what's so important to us, because many of these populations, this population are at risk of not going to college at all, or not completing college. So HBCUs are there for those first generation college students, the 20% or more who are African American, who are graduating and becoming productive citizens in society. And so I've taken it as a mission to fight this battle to assist HBCUs at every level. We met with the administration. I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later, but I think there are aspects of education, of higher education, the secondary education, prepare them for higher education that we're really honing in on right now. So that's why it's so important to me.
I grew up in Georgia, and my mother was very clear with me that education was the great equalizer. She indicated that in order for her to not have to pick cotton every summer for the rest of her life, she went to college. And so it was emphatic in my household that this is, if you intend to do more with your life and pick up and run the baton, that you have to get your education. And so the struggle that I have is I have devoted 35 years to education. And what I have seen consistently is that there is this push to say, we want to make sure we're taking care of Black and Brown children, that they're getting the resources they need, that there's equity, and it's not happening. And it is recently that I've been really looking at the fact that the racism that exists within our school systems, it is a system. It is not an event. It is a system that is so deeply ingrained that it is woven into our expectations that when we try to break the system, it's viewed by others as unfair. And so my deep-rooted intent is to move us from watching our kids come to school unprepared for kindergarten and continue to let the system grow. So by the time they're in 3rd grade, they're even more unprepared. By the time they're in 5th grade, even more so. And just trying to get them to college becomes an intense barrier. What my interest is I have worked with African-American children my entire career. I cannot, on my watch, continue to let this be. And so when you ask me about why am I here, this is my watch. I'm here for a purpose, and I will not sit by and let my children suffer. And so that's why I'm here. Today I had a intense conversation about high stakes testing and what it does to our Brown and Black children when you label them as low performing consistently over and over again and think that's okay. And that's not okay. So I'm here because my intent is whatever we have to do to push an agenda that finally breaks the system and doesn't just continue with a series of events. That's where we need to head.
What we have to look at in terms of public policy is that we're making a choice. Race has come up so frequently in the past year since the lynching of George Floyd, et cetera, Breonna Taylor. We have to look at whether public policy should be race neutral, which is what is going to go to the Supreme Court because this court will not uphold affirmative action, or if it's going to be race conscious. Now, public policy has been race conscious as long as we've been here. Laws were passed to keep us from holding certain kind of occupations. But now many want race neutrality. And what Dr. Leek said earlier was the people who need it need to get it. If we're looking at really maximum productivity and closing the achievement gap, then we're looking at Brown and Black and poor young people who are being sidelined, basically redlined, if you will, out of higher education. But I will guarantee you, Dr. Whitaker, that executive order is one of those that Joe Biden will throw away. And I don't talk to him every day, or even any day for that matter. But I'm certain, based on the approach that he's taken, that that executive order will be gone soon. He already plans to come into office with a series of executive orders. What I'm hopeful about is that HBCUs get more support. And with Kamala Harris being a Howard University grad, I expect that there will be some changes and there will be some strengthening. And what we need in HBCU land is strengthening infrastructure.
Typically, our institutions are the least likely to be the beneficiaries of any resources. Too frequently, you see more funding going to think tanks than you do to people who actually do the work themselves. Mm-hmm. And so, I think the biggest thing has to be, these problems did not start overnight. And we've got to support things that work. And I don't think it's an issue of innovation. It's an issue of scale. Mm-hmm. There are individuals on this panel that have done amazing work. And what tends to happen is the individuals who are doing great work for the most vulnerable minoritized students have the smallest megaphone in this conversation. And so part of what I would expect in this conversation is definitely a focus on resources for institutions, but also resources for individuals and organizations that are committed to that mission. Too frequently, we see a number of organizations that are not led by Black and brown folks sitting back having the conversations about the ills of, and the problems and the achievement gaps of Black and brown students. That has to end. That has to be part of the agenda.
With that being said, and yet it is still key to have the right people at the table, because if you surround yourself with the thinking of the people that have been at the table, we're going to continue to produce the same outcome, which would be education agendas that don't close the academic achievement gap.
Exactly.
Which will be education agendas. We all know that last year some would call it a celebration of the 65th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education, when we learned that our schools were still segregated. So having the right people at the table to, again, add value to the expertise that already comes, because we know it's going to come. I'm not doubting that at all. The question is, do they have the interest, the practical and the theoretical knowledge around what it takes to ensure that Black children achieve?
Dr. Balboa gave him a D+.
Say again?
Dr. Balboa gave him a D or a D+.
I want you to think of 1 to 3 policies that you absolutely, because I'm absolutely positive that income administration is watching us now. And our goal is to be helpful, not harmful, right? So I want you to think of 1 to 3 policies that you want to make sure that this administration considers so that we, again, accomplish the goal of achieving equity in education. Dr. Malveaux, let your voice fill this airway.
Okay, well, 1 to 3, that's
1 to 3.
Well, first of all, because you have to talk about poverty, you have to talk about food, you have to talk about so many things. What I would say that wraparound services in our public schools. By wraparound services, I mean social workers, everything you need that a young person needs. We have too many stories of young people going hungry, being homeless and all that. So really wraparound services will be one of my strong recommendations. Secondly, send the best teachers to the worst schools. In other words, right now, the best teachers go to the best schools. And those who are at the worst schools, we get basically dummies coming to our schools. We want the best teachers at the best schools, the best teachers at the worst schools. And then the third thing, Dr. Whitaker, you mentioned it earlier when you talked about books. We have to attack curriculum. What are our young people seeing in the books that they have? When I went to wherever I went, high school, something, they had 2 Black people in the history book. One looked like they had escaped from an Uncle Ben's rice box, and the other one looked like they had escaped from a pancake box. Those were the Black people in the history book. Our young people need to see how great we are, how many wonderful things we've done. Talking about Paul Robeson, talking about Sadie Alexander. So we really have to tackle curriculum. And if there is some kind of executive order, frankly, there ought to be an executive order about curriculum. The Secretary of Education needs to be involved in curriculum development. We need to have a list of materials that should be in our school libraries or should be required reading.
I want to piggyback or pick up from Dr. Malveaux, because one of the things that we did in Illinois is this evidence-based funding model, which actually takes every school and assesses for the children that you are servicing, that's the resources they need, be it counselors, social workers, nurses, how many teachers, class size, and said for a student in this particular district, you need X dollars to educate that child. This is how many dollars you're getting right now, and here's the gap. And so our state has now started putting in money to close that gap. So what I would like to see from a national perspective is a equitable funding mandate that we are required across the nation to determine what is it the baseline that every child needs, and then how much funding would that require, and then what's the gap, and then let's start to fill in that funding, because that'll take care of your wraparound services, our family engagement, ensuring we have the curriculum that we need to have in place. So that's my first one.
Dr. Lee, let me just ask you, would you say that Illinois, that we could serve as a model at least?
Absolutely. We could be a model for it, because that really grew out of years of recognizing the discrepancies in the funding.
All right,
so we're not there yet, but
Okay.
we have a model in place to get there. Now
All
we
right.
just need the funds to do it.
All right,
And
give
then
me one more, and then I'll have everybody else give me two. for
Okay,
our final portion.
I can only pick one. Okay, an anti-racism education. That's anti-racism, and really, because in the conversations we've been having with our white colleagues, the fact that people are now saying, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I thought I was being good, and I thought because I wasn't out there with the Ku Klux Klan that I was a good, just learning for them to even start to learn and to look through a different lens. So what that looks like in terms of anti-racism education, it's adults, children, across the board. But I think that needs to be an emphasis in this administration.
Are you referring to the training itself or the curriculum?
I'm referring to the adults,
yes,
and the children in school. And so the adults, the adults have to engage in that conversation in order for them to then start to look at the curriculum and making sure that that curriculum reflects the full breadth and scope of who we are.
So I believe you're referring to the training associated with anti-racism. Is that correct?
That's the first step.
Okay, all right, got it.
That would be my first step.
Gotcha.
You only let me pick one more, so I had to
All right.
whittle it down.
Right. All right, Dr. Glover.
Well, mine are very simple. First one is teacher pay. Teacher pay, make sure we reach strikes of equity in that, because we can't find enough good teachers. And so the discrimination and the financial system that pertains to teachers is just outrageous. So that's the first one. And the second one, we must tackle the systemic racism. Stop ignoring it. Stop playing games with it. Pretend like it doesn't exist, and we have tiptoe around it. Just tackle the systemic racism. And then those are the two big issues that I see in the education system. We need to work on it.
Thank you so much. Dr. Elston.
One of my favorite quotes is by Bishop Desmond Tutu, and he says, there comes a point at which we need to stop pulling people out of the river, and we need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. And when I think about that, I think about the most important thing that needs to happen across any policy is centering it around students. Students demand change. They want credentials that matter. They want credentials that are respected. They want to get through college faster. They need easier to navigate models, and they need it to be more affordable. And I think that a policy that will ensure that that happens is making sure that we are focused on some level of college or larger data transparency around what is it that we're measuring, because you have currently no way of knowing what's working and what isn't. And you've got to be sure to focus your time and your money and your resources on those things that are going to have real long-term value to students and communities. And so where there are gaps, then we fill them based on that information. And those individuals that are doing well, we continue to incentivize those institutions that have continued to been vanguards in this work. And so I think those are some of the most important pieces of an agenda.
Thank you so much. So grab your pen and piece of paper, because I'm getting ready to summarize what you just heard us say in terms of potential policy recommendations. And they are wraparound service in our education institutions, policies related to incentives so that the best teachers attend the work at the lowest performing schools, policies associated with attacking the curriculum and materials to make sure it reflects the spirits and the lives of children of color and children experiencing the impact of poverty. A funding model. We are advocating for the development of a more equitable funding model that is modeled out of the United States Department of Education. We are advocating for policy associated with addressing anti-racism education. We're advocating for teacher pay to be higher. We want to make sure that teachers are paid their worth. And we are also advocating for the tackling of systemic racism. And as Dr. Elston said in closing, a policy around measuring success. I'd like to add value to that, to suggest all due respect to any and all former U.S. Secretary of Education folks and their cabinets. I'm a cabinet member, so I know what it's like to be on the grind. But with all due respect, I think that we would all agree that our policies and practices have not resulted in statistically significant improvements and the social, emotional, or academic well-being of children of color and children experiencing the impact of poverty, including Black children. So at the risk of being redundant, policies around measuring success as opposed to stepping into place and throwing away everything that has ever occurred in every administration's tenure, we're going to close by recommending that we examine what works, that we build upon that, because we are the United States of America and we got this. I'd like to thank you again for your gift of time. I'd like to say thank you to the audience members who are saying, Doc, do not end this conversation. That's never happened before. So be on the lookout, be well, take care of yourself and your family, and be safe. Thank you.
Dr. Kim, I went to jail with a group of 7 students, July 17, 1960, almost 60 years ago. We never stopped moving. I lost a few of jail cells and death. We never stopped moving. I thought it was time to write some of it down so the older generation can learn how we did, and what we did, and how global it was. Whether speaking about Mandela in South Africa, India, Qatar, Gandhi in India, here at home. This book tells the story, so please get it and give it to your friends. Read it, let's argue about it, let's discuss it.
Yep, so the book is Keeping Hope Alive, Sermons and Speeches of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. It's quite a good collection. You know, we've got sermons and speeches from around the globe because you have made such a global impact, not just here in the US, but around the world.
Thank you for tuning in to our International Saturday morning broadcast. We need your support. Here are ways to give to Rainbow Push Coalition. Text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444 to support the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Rainbow Push Coalition. When you shop, Amazon gives. Visit Amazon Smile and select Push for Excellence as your charitable organization by starting your shopping at smile.amazon.com.
Hi, I'm Todd Yeary here outside Dr. King's workshop, the Rainbow Push headquarters, where people of goodwill from all walks and all places gather as comrades in the movement for justice and equality. Social justice movements have been birthed in the imaginations of people in places just like this. You can be a part of this justice movement too. Join Rainbow Push as we fight for justice in the 21st century. Go to rainbowpush.org or dial 773-FREEDOM and remember, keep hope alive.
Get involved with the movement.
Somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Join the movement.
If you're not a member, become a member.
I am somebody.
Fighting the most important battles for freedom and justice for all.
You made us change. Oh, trying to bring closer.
Join Rainbow Push.
But you're not pushing me away.
Join